Here. And just as a reminder that I am recording this and we'll be posting it on YouTube. If you don't want your face and name showing up on that, please, mute or turn off your video and change your name, and we'll go from there, because just by being here, you're giving consent for that. Or if not, ping me and we'll have a talk about it. With that, I'll hand it off. Justin? Or
Great,
Justin,
great.
Dustin.
You wanna start the recording over, Steve?
Nah.
All right, can you see my screen?
I can. Yep.
All right, good. Yeah, so as Steve mentioned, my name is Dustin Thostenson. I grew up in Minnesota. You might hear some of the long O's in there. Usually when I talk to my parents, the accent comes on stronger, but I've been in Iowa for a couple of decades now. We moved south where it's a little bit warmer, and been loving it here. And as Steve mentioned, we'd work at Industrial Logic together, and have just loved the conversations that we would have. Basic concept here. I got my understand, be understood mantra. This is something that I had come up with after a little bit of reflection. I found that the thing that kind of keeps me going through the day, the thing that I think about often is, do I understand? Am I putting the effort into understanding somebody else? And then when it is my turn to speak or share information, am I being understood? And I work tirelessly at this. If you find things that are not being understood easily for me, and if you have recommendations, I implore you to share that to help me be a little bit better in that regard. And as far as being understood, as far as me understanding people, I do want this to be a conversation. If you have things that you want to bring up and interject, I would really appreciate if you do so. And Steve, I might not be good at focusing on all the things. I might miss messages in the chat, so please feel free to interject whenever you have that chance.
Will do. Thank
you. So the basis of this conversation is really around the things that I've seen, the patterns that I've recognized. I've seen a lot of consultants and a lot of consulting fail. I've kind of studied from my failures and studied from theirs, read some books, been in some great book clubs with people that have had a lot of insight, and that's driven a lot of the concepts that I want to explore with everybody here today. As I mentioned, for me personally, I want to understand and be understood, but the thing that gets me up every day is working with teams to kind of help them be their best. I've worked in some bad situations before where, they have all the developers locked in a basement, and you come in early, you leave late, they bring in some crappy pizza to, keep you at your desk. And all of a sudden you realize it's been a week since you've seen the sun. And, treat like resources. I've seen a lot of developers suffer in the pressured environments with, family issues and, mental health issues, substance abuse issues. I think of it as kind of the seed in the soil. You've got the seed that people focus on, the developer. We wonder why the developer can't produce more, et cetera. And a lot of times companies forget about the soil, the environment that you have to help teams be their best. So for me, after I've been on some really fabulous teams in my history, I kind of believe that that's just so right for all developers. And I'm trying to help to make sure that the soil, the environment is good for all the developers so they can kind of do their best, deliver their best, and make their customers happy. A lot more than kind of local optimizations. So that's a little bit of where I'm coming from and where my mind is at. I was thinking a little bit about, in general, the problem statement for what we're covering today. And I was thinking, it's having the skills and being hired to help isn't enough. And I've seen a lot of people coming in, trying to help other people and failing. Gerry Weinberg has a quote: "Consulting is the art of influencing people at their request." And I've seen a lot of very smart, very talented people engaging with teams, whether it be as an external consultant or an internal subject matter. It doesn't really matter. I'm using that term consultant kind of loosely, but the people who have some ideas and they have some experience of things that work would fail. I've seen the consultants get really pissed off, pull out the, do you know how much money I make? Do you know how much they're paying for me to be here? Do you know who I am? I've written books, I've spoken at conferences, just do as I say, like all these other examples. And I've seen people get walked off the client quickly for that. And it bothered me. Mm-hmm. It bothered me a lot because I know that they need the money, right? We're all working and most of us need to have income to support families, etc. And it just seemed to be such a waste that the problem wasn't that they didn't know the content and the material, but how they implemented it was very wrong. Does anybody else have some good horror stories that they'd like to share for people coming in and maybe being correct, but not necessarily kind or effective?
I've seen folks come in, coaches come in and be that proverbial bull in a china shop as well too, where they really know their stuff and they really know what will help the teams, but it's not done empathetically and they're not meeting people where they are. So yeah, I've certainly seen that happen.
I had one coach who walked into the CIO's office and says, "I need you to introduce me to the teams." And the CIO said, "You've been doing this long enough, you can do it yourself." And he goes, "No, I need you to do it because they need to hear from your mouth, so I have the authority." And the CIO said, "Just take care of it." Walked in his office, shut the door, and the consultant came in, opened the door back up, and it's like, "No, I need you out here." And well, that was that. Anybody else have any horror stories, war stories that they've seen for people just blowing it up?
Or experienced?
The flip side of, they may be good consultants, and I think your example, Dustin, is one that I've had where management, senior management, executive management ignores the teams at their level and their advice and says, no, we have to bring in consultants who then come in, we spend $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 on the consultants who then end up recommending what the team recommended in the first place. Very, very, very frustrating to teams.
That's a good point, Ron.
Yeah, I just got to say, I love what Ron just said, because I've seen that happen a number of times where it's consultants come in and say exactly what the team has been saying. They just needed to hear from a high-priced coach, essentially.
Which, by the way, the high-priced coach generally doesn't get that money if they work for another company.
Did anybody else have any stories they wanted to share? All right. So again, here's that quote by Gerry Weinberg. Gerry Weinberg, his Secrets of Consulting book, that was the first book I read about 15 years ago when I quit being full-time and went off on my own. And I've read it twice since, and there's so much good knowledge in there. But the slide deck today is pretty simple. I'm going to basically revolve around a couple of images, right? We've got the consultant on the left here. That's probably going to represent you, one of our audience members here. And it could be a formal consultant, with the title and being brought in specifically for it, or it could apply as just that person on the team that's trying to help influence other people for improvements. And then the client, again, it's really the target of the people that you want to help. It could be an individual, it could be team, department, company. It's kind of an all-inclusive term for client. And a lot of this is going to talk about that give and take between the consultant and the client. And again, feel free to jump in at any point if something strikes you, or if you have a question, or if there's a story that you want to tell, which something might have inspired you for. I studied Maslow's hierarchy in college, and it was one of those psychology classes where you're like, oh, okay, fine. And then you move on, finish the class and be done with it. And at a point in my career, it popped in my head again, and I started thinking about it more. And from that motivation perspective, I started going, whoa, wait a second, there's something here. And I think to kind of get started with, I might be providing a lot more questions than answers in this talk, but I think that's because the answers are things that are really important for you. And maybe some of these questions can help, but I think a lot about like, what is it that you want? And I think that everybody is just in different spots. Some people have, some very low needs that they need to take care of. I can't think about how many people like my Instagram post if I'm trying to figure out how to make my mortgage so we don't get evicted. I can't think about how to optimize my API if I'm worried about our contract getting cut, right? Or if I'm worried about the production issues we're currently facing. So everybody has different needs, and you can't really build on higher level needs until your core base needs are assessed, they're being met. This is important for me to kind of think about that, because as I've gone to different clients, I've thought, okay, what is the pay? Is it going to be enough for me to take care of my needs? Who am I going to be working with? I've gone to companies before so I can work with really great people and have really good experiences. It's kind of selfish. So I think when you are engaging in this type of work, again, formal or informal consulting, I think that you got to remember that you are the only person that you can control. And I know I'm the only person that I can control. I can't control my wife. I can't control my 4 kids. And I can barely control myself sometimes. So again, kind of starting with yourself and level setting. And recognizing that just as you have these needs, the client that you're working with has these as well. I've seen coaches that are more established, that they can take off, a few months because they've been saving money over their career, and they're coming in and trying to inflict help upon other people, and not really taking into consideration where those people are. I've worked at clients that have leaned on people that are not from the US and that have visas and are really worried about keeping their job because they've got their daughter in preschool already, and they've got a lease on their car, and they've seen some of their friends lose the contract and have to go back home and give up everything that they've worked for. It's easy to look past that when you're thinking about yourself, because maybe you've been established and you have all of your things set up where you live and it's working well for you. But for the people that you're working with, sometimes you might be asking them to do things that they're just not willing to do. And if somebody is worried about, literally their physiological needs or their safety needs, and you have these answers and you want them to do the test first, and you want them to get the best performance out of their lambdas, that might not be something that they're really physically and mentally able to commit to. And if you're unaware of that, if you haven't taken any time at all to go, what's going on with that person's world, you're going to be missing an opportunity, and you're probably going to get some pushback and be a little bit confused, like, where is that coming from? And these are really simple questions to ask, and they're extremely simple to look past and ignore, but that's kind of like ignoring your check engine light. If the check engine light is on, you can't just put some black tape over it and cover it up and ignore it because you don't want to deal with it. Those problems probably will come back later. And they can be pretty catastrophic.
Hey, Dustin, I read a book called Educated recently. It's a biography from a lady named Tara Westover.
Right.
She grew up in a poor family in Idaho and got a scholarship to BYU, but she always had financial trouble. And ultimately, like she said that when she applied for a grant that her counselor helped her get, and she got $4,000 in her bank account, it was the most money she had ever seen in her life. It was like the words on the page of the books that she was reading were clearer. She could take notes without a fog through her brain, because it was things like a toothache that she couldn't pay for that was hindering her education and all these things. It was that made me realize exactly what you're saying, where it's like, there are people that have these challenges that we just aren't aware of. And knowing them and addressing them makes it that much easier to get their full potential.
It's a great example.
Dustin, I'll add another example too. As my co-author and I were working, we're bringing Maslow into our thought process. There's a point, Carter, that it can apply to all of us. Those of us who've been managers try to move whole teams up into that self-actualization realm. And thank you for Dustin for pointing out people on green cards or not on green cards yet, and that toughness of moving. But sometimes you can move a team all the way to the top, but it takes one rumor of layoffs to take that whole team all the way down to the bottom. And all of us, and having been there, all of us suddenly worried about safety needs and physiological needs.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. So I guess kind of thinking about those things, right? I think it's good to come back and say, like, why are you here? Because we'll start off with the selfishness. I know that there's a lot of diagrams of back and forth, but you know what? The easiest thing is to think about ourselves and to think like, what is it that I want? And as you're entering that type of engagement, I think it's very important to figure out, like, why are you here? And it's not that any of these answers are wrong, but it can influence how you're approaching things. If you're here for the money, that's fine, right? But just be aware of that. Or maybe you're here because you want to belong. You like the team, you want to be part of something bigger. Maybe you want to have some esteem. You want to be able to say, hey, I joined this struggling company and I fixed them. And now I can write my secrets in a book and make it easy for everybody else to rinse and repeat and say, just do these things and everything's going to be awesome, and make everybody else feel bad when they can't get the same results. Maybe your happiness is just helping to grow other people. Maybe if you can find a few people that really seem to, take the nurturing and grow, you're fine. Maybe it's just straight up results. You got your OKRs and you were able to increase your velocity by 42%, and or maybe it is just that self-actualization where you feel that regardless of the results, regardless of the money, that you're just happy to invest your time and doing the best with the gifts that you received. So like I said before, my mission is to improve the lives of developers. Really, I want to help teams be awesome. And that's what I look for. I look for those opportunities, and that might not mean the fastest API, but that's the thing that I look for when I go to places. Other times, sometimes I might be looking for the highest rate. We all get needs.
So Dustin, one of the things to me is that it's one of these, like you say, can be my primary focus, but there are other things that are secondary influences on that too. And it helps to know how that hierarchy changes from time to time. For instance, if I'm without a job, and I need to be providing income because I'm the sole income for the house, the pay is much higher rather than making teams happy. But if I'm feeling more secure and I'm just out looking for a job while I have an existing job, it's that hierarchy changes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think ultimately, if you're looking for something like this, then maybe to get to there, maybe you try to make some other decisions earlier that mean that you don't have to focus on this, right? Maybe if you don't have 3 Teslas that you have loans on, maybe that enables you to have more time. And I joke about that because my contract, my current client ended today, and I don't have another contract lined up. But I'm happy to have some time off because there's some professional development that I wanted to do for myself. And I'm going to focus on that time. And I know that we're going to be able to afford it. So that was, that's going to put me in the spot where I want to be later on. So, flipping it around from what is it that I want, you also have to look at what is it that I have to give. And this is something which might seem really simple, but I've seen a lot of people look past it and not be able to articulate it. A lot of coaches I've seen come in are really good developers. And they might get brought in as a coach or even be, leaned on their teams as a coach. And all that they want to do is they just want to work on the problem. They just want to write the code. Or other people are just looking at the process, right? Hey, if you just do these things, if you sprinkle these ceremonies and you adhere to these rules and you fix this process, that's going to, result in automatic enlightenment. Some people like to study the problem and come up with ideas. Other people might want to ask really good questions. That's kind of one of the things that I'm doing now, is trying to ask some questions that maybe spark ideas for other people. And I've also got the emotions here. And, one of the things that you are giving to other people is emotion. Are you giving them stress? Are you giving them support? Are you giving them happiness or anger? And again, just thinking about what can you give and what do you want to give is quite important. If you don't take a step back, you might kind of have some blinders on and focus on the wrong thing, which to that point then might not really be that agreement that you're looking for. Like, do you have the things that they want? Does your cart fill the barren thing that they have over here? Are they looking for the coding? Are they looking for something specific? Sometimes in training, it's great. You're coming in, you're doing a 45-minute session on discovery trees. I'm just going to plug that thing that's going on tomorrow in Twitterverse on discovery trees for Steve there. In that case, maybe you have that one thing that you're going to give them and it's very clear. That's what they brought you in for. If it's a long-term engagement, those coaching engagements can be kind of harder. And then you think about, am I inflicting on people? Are the people who brought us in the same people that we're working with? Did the team bring you in because they know you and they want to have help? Or did management inflict help upon the team because the problem is the development team, not the leadership team? And part of that, again, you know what you want, you know the things that you have to give. If it is not clear what is necessary for that arrangement, you got to do a lot of looking and listening. You really got to pay attention and not just look for the confirmation bias. Don't just listen how many times your pipeline is broken. Don't just listen to the code coverage. Look for the things that you want, but like really try to open up and pay attention to like what it is that they want. Because ultimately, like a vampire, you got to be invited in. You can't just inflict yourself. You have to be pulled in and you have to be able to give them the things that they need. And if you're not listening for that, you might have a mismatch right off the bat there.
So is another way to say that is to be open and responsive rather than closed and prescriptive?
Exactly. Here's Tim Ottinger's beautiful diagram there, the curiosity over contempt.
Yep.
Yeah, asking over telling. And sometimes they don't know, like they don't know what they want. And in certain cases, you know, if they knew what they needed, and if they knew how to do it, they would have been done with it already. So sometimes there can be a little bit of help to come in. I like to build relationships. It's been a struggle for me when COVID happened and we were working remotely, because I was used to flying to the client every week. I was used to being able to sit in the room with people and read the body language of not just the people who are talking. I was used to being able to get coffee and lunch with people, you know, have a beer after work with people and listen to them, and then start figuring out like what does that Maslow's hierarchy look like for different people? You know, do we have people who are low on energy because they've been worked so much they don't have any really good ideas? Do we got schedule pressures? Do they have a testing pyramid which is upside down? They got the ice cream cone sandwich testing pyramid, which is causing them problems. Are they feeling pressured to deliver? You know, low on money, spouse doesn't like them. When you start talking with people, you will learn a lot. And I think that oftentimes if you're listening, they will tell you the things that they need in their life. And then you go back to the things that you have and start figuring out like, okay, well, given all of these opportunities, where are we going to try to map up? Got a big solid line on that ice cream cone inverted testing pyramid model. Got a lot of experience in that area. I can really help out with that. All right, let's focus on that thing. And you know, maybe our infrastructure is a little bit weak, and well, I can help with that. I know some things that we can do to kind of stabilize the infrastructure that you have today. You know, and for the metrics, I might be able to help with that. Maybe I can help with a roadmap. I've got some ideas I can share. Not really sure what to do about those timeline commitments, the calendar being too busy. Don't know what I can do about their financial situation. Maybe, you know, if they perform better, if they can learn some of the things that I've learned, they might see raises from that. Not really sure what to do about their partner situation. But you kind of have to, like, at least what I found is helpful is just to understand people and then figure out like where can we focus on. And as Woody Zuhl often talks about, turn up the good, right? So find some things, see if you can get some improvements there, and recognize that you can't do everything. And in some areas as well here too, you know, that might be outside of my skill set. One of my mentors would repeatedly say, you can't give what you don't have. And he would talk about people being way over their skis. So maybe for me making recommendations in this area, maybe I recognize myself that I better do more learning. If I want to have the capabilities to help somebody in this area, I need to learn more. And how can I do that? How can I read books? How can I get involved in different conversations, etc.? Maybe we don't know how to work with senior leadership yet to help them give better direction that makes it easier for the team to do their thing. When you work with people as well, they're going to tell you all the things that are wrong and all the reasons why they can't do things. And part of it, you know, there is some learned helplessness occasionally when you're helping people. Part of it is the old Ford Tayloristic mentality of that local optimization. This is my job. It's somebody else's job to tell me what to do. You know, there's the concept of the quiet quitting now. I'm only going to do exactly what's being asked of me. I'm not going to do anything more. Sometimes if people want things to be better, you have to understand what is it that they really can control, and what are the things that they really could influence. There's also things that concern them that they have no control or influence over. But it's interesting to go through this type of exercise where you can identify that. I've just seen this, I learned it from Matthew Carlson, actually. You put it on a whiteboard, you have a bunch of sticky notes of the different things that the team might be able to make decisions around, and you let the team say, this is something that we control. We can come up with our own team name. We can deploy to prod when we want. We can run the tests in the pipeline when we want. And then you have the managers do the same thing. Do the managers think that the team can create their own name? Do the managers think that the team can go to production when they want? You will often find a bit of a gap between what the leaders assume the team is empowered to do and what the team assumes they were empowered to do. And sometimes identifying that gap can be very helpful in a very necessary conversation, because oftentimes teams think that there's very little they can control besides if statements and for loops. They might not think that they even can control writing a test, which blows my mind, because I mean, we're getting paid good money. We're professionals. And yet we're not allowed to act like professionals. I can't imagine having the electrician come into my home and fix things as I decide. Like, I swapped out a bunch of my light switches. I like the motion sensors, so when I walk into the bathroom or the closet, the lights turn on because I'm too lazy to turn them on, and then they automatically turn them off. And when we moved into this house, I did a lot of them myself, and I was too lazy to go to the garage to turn off the circuit breaker. And I told myself, if I just make sure to keep the wires apart, I should be able to swap these things out. And most of the times I was correct, but I electrocuted myself more times than I'd like to admit, because I'd always make a stupid little mistake. But that was a choice that I made. When I had somebody come into my house to do the work, I did not tell the electrician that he can't go and turn off the breaker. I didn't tell the doctor that they don't have time to wash their hands before they operate. I didn't tell the accountant how to determine, what values are being used. Like, professionals have a responsibility to act a certain way. And obviously other people's intent are to keep things moving for them, right? They want things to move fast. But as a professional developer, I think that there's that obligation to say, no, I do control this. This is my choice. I don't want to give that up.
I actually love that analogy of having an electrician come in and saying, you know what? Please don't turn off the circuit breaker, because that just causes extra time and money. You should be good enough where you don't need to do it.
Don't make me change my VCR time again.
Right.
Just in case the gray beard wasn't enough for you to trigger that I'm old. Oh, I forgot I had the fancy stuff going on there. A quick little comment here about, again, as we are engaging with people and we're understanding them and we're trying to find, like, where can we help? There is the drama triangle, and there's this balance between being the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. It's really easy to come in and listen to people talk about how they are the victim, and then you decide that you're going to be the rescuer, which then, sometimes you might always be coming in to help, and there's a fluid movement between these roles. People are not statically the victim or the rescuer or the persecutor. There's a lot of reading you can do on this, but I think for the purpose here, just be aware of the kind of role that you could be involved now that we're getting into the interpersonal aspect of work, and we're not just, writing the code. It's necessary, and it's easy to kind of jump in and thinking my job is to be the rescuer and to, save the victims from the persecutors, but that can cause its own litany of issues. And again, one other thing too is, as you observe, you might see facts, you might hear stories, but the ladder of inference is something that has really stuck with me a lot, especially over the last half decade, I think. Perception is reality. And the things that happen that are all kind of objective to us, and how people select that data and add meaning to it and make assumptions and draw conclusions and have beliefs. This happens a lot. And again, this is outside of our control. So from the time that an event happens and the actions that a person takes based off of those, you don't have any control over what's going on here. Just be aware of it. You know, a lot of developers are very logical people. We love the science of it. Unit tests are great. Given this context, apply to this action, you get the results. With humans, it's not always that clear. So, you know, be aware of what you're working with here. And for me, the best I've been able to do is just acknowledge that some of these things happen, which result in something over here that I don't like. And again, I can't control it. So for me, that kind of gives me the chance to choose what I'm going to do with that. And maybe I decide not to fight it. Right? Maybe this ladder is completely different for somebody else, and I'm not going to change that. So maybe I decide not to, just disengage. That can trigger a lot of emotions. And the one thing I have learned is the way that you feel about somebody, they will be able to pick up on it. If John Reed and I were fortunate enough to work together for a little bit, and you know, if I'm going to pick on John here, if John had a certain feeling about somebody and he shared that feeling about the person with me, the other person knew how he was thinking about them too, even if he didn't explicitly state it. So if John was mad at somebody, they probably could pick up on it. But most of the times John was happy about it and people could recognize that. But very few of us are so good where the way that we feel about a person doesn't actually reflect on them. So what I mean by that is, as I've worked with other coaches, we would get together after work and we would talk about the client and, oh my gosh, this client is so screwed up and they're making all these bad choices and these idiots should do something better. And I go, yeah, you're right. They don't know what they're doing and they do need to figure this out. And guess what? They hired us. So if you want to hate them, that's fine, right? If you want to call them idiots and say, these dunderheads don't know what they're doing, I'm so smart, they're so dumb, you can take that approach and they will pick up the contempt. They will feel it, that you are looking down on them. Or you can tell yourself, some of these people haven't had the same experiences that I've had. Some of these people haven't read the same books or worked with the same people or tried the same experiments. So maybe I can look at this as an opportunity to say, hey, maybe some of these people have a chance to discover something new. And maybe I'm lucky enough to be the person that gets to show them that new thing, just as other people have done that to me. I continue to look back over my career at all the people who have shown me new things that I was unaware of. And they did that because they cared, right? So if you're mad at them because they don't know something or because they're not doing something, that's fine. They will feel it and they will send that right back to you. And as that cycle amplifies, you will find yourself out of a job quickly. Or if you can find a way to appreciate where they're at and find a way to be, kind about it, you might have some better results. And that kind of feeds into the whole concept of that attraction principle. You have to push where they're pulling. If you're trying to overpower, you're pushing what they're pushing, it's not going to work that well. Esther Derby has some great comments about that in her book, the 7 rules for positive productive change. She says here, instead of mandating blanket installations of new processes, find the people who see the need for change, want to try something new, and want to work with you to affect that change. And even if you have all the answers, even if you've read all these great books and you've spoken at conferences and you've got decades of experience, they might not want to work with you. You might remind them of somebody they grew up with that they hated. Maybe their neighbor looked like, Steve, and they just can't get past the atomic wedgies, Maybe they see something in you that they see in themselves that they hate. Whatever it is, though, find the people that want to do the good and work with them and watch that get amplified. Again, Woody Zuhl, turn up the good. Steve and I were talking earlier, he's, going to work with some teams, and you get the people that want to work together and you do the thing and you see value. And then eventually you cross that chasm where enough people are doing the good thing in the good way because it's better for them. And other people go, ooh, I like that too.
Mhm. To me, it's sort of meet them where they are and nurture the good habits that they already have. Nurture and emphasize.
I
Perfect.
find this comes up a lot when you are brought in by somebody higher up and not at the request of the team.
And then when that happens, then we start taking a look at the power dynamics of it, especially if you are brought in to enact change, which might be objectively measured. You are brought in to have OKR improvements of 42%. If it's not working, then people start kind of leverage power. Are we using positional power because the manager said that you are the authority and that they have to do what you say? Are we able to bribe people to say, hey, if you're on this team and you get these features done by this date, we'll give you that bonus? Or are you using some of that personal power, right? They like you. You've got special abilities because you wrote a book on testing on a platform that most developers don't like to work on, right, John? Or
Low.
can't help myself. Do you have information power? Do you have that connection power? With that team, have you been able to connect to not just the team that you're with, but their consumers and their managers and other dependencies? Do you have that connection to say they're having a problem over here, and maybe I happen to know somebody that can help with that problem, instead of leaning on the process and again relying on that local optimization? Maybe you're able to have some simple connections and mention something over lunch with a friend that makes somebody else's life better. But again, whenever I've seen people lean into the positional power, you may see results, but they're short-termed. And as soon as you quit pushing, they regress. So for me, I think a lot of that is we want things, we want them to want certain things. We want them to want to do TDD and to build pipelines and to do all these other types of things. And maybe they don't want that. So from an influence perspective, it's your job to plant the seeds to emerge the needs. Can you have a code kata where it makes it safe for them to try things out, but you're not going to threaten their ability to get a feature done on time? Can you make it safe for them to do things hands-on, not talk about it in theory, but actually to try things where they go, wait a second, I want to learn more. And there's a whole lot of different ways that you can go about doing that, but that might be part of your job to help other people, right? They might need to pull from you before they're really getting the things that you want to give them to get to the point where you might have been yourself. You might have been on a great team that's pushing the prod 10 times a day, but they might only be pushing the prod once every 10 months, right? You can't just flip it. But maybe if they find that they can do it once every month, because you found a way to make it safe, then maybe you can continue to make that virtuous cycle here. You know, and again, if there is that disconnect between people, holding up the mirror is a common analogy. Sometimes I'll tell people, this is the painting that I made with the colors and shapes that you described to me. Is this correct? Does this resonate with you? Am I understanding you correctly? And sometimes being able to hold that mirror up to them allows them to look at themselves and say, huh, you know, that does look like what we're at. I had a friend who put a mirror on his refrigerator door, because every time he went to go to the fridge, he would have to look at himself, and it was right next to a picture of him in a bathing suit from the previous summer. And he would have to like face that and go, yeah, no, I probably don't need that candy bar right now. I don't need the chocolate milk. And it goes for yourself as well too, again, to, you know, look at yourself and realizing, you know, what's going on. You know, like you get comfortable with who you are, you get comfortable with where you are. It's a really funny thing when somebody says they're coming over to your house and you look around, you go, holy crap, it's a pigsty in here. You never noticed it before because you're not being honest with each other. Steve made his bed today, so it's not that bad. But, you know, so that mirror is good to use as a technique to help them see things, but also to recognize it yourself, I think. And as you get a lot of that knowledge and you try to figure out what to do, I think I like to try to have a clear message with kind messaging. Clear message, kind messaging. And what I mean by that is, for all the different problems that they have, you're not going to solve all of them. Can you find, based on the conversations that you've had with all the different people, a few things that you could do? And can you make that path clear? And can you make it kind so they can not feel like you're making them feel bad about it, but to say, here's some things that we can do to make some improvements. Get ourselves under source control. Maybe do the things that we need to do to get the build stable. Can you help pull all those ideas from different people together where we recognize everybody is working on that same message? And can you keep it simple? I think so much of what I see is a lot of local optimizations in different areas because everybody's fighting for their thing. It doesn't all pull together. It doesn't all work together because nobody's able to do it on their own. So if you can find some simple things where everybody is in alignment and it's positive, we have seen that work, and it's pretty great when it does. It's not complex. It just takes a lot of patience and understanding, I think. I mean, that whole factory mindset, right? Local optimization made a lot of sense when you're building cars and you've got somebody who's looking down on people, and the only thing they have to do is put in, you know, the windshield or a wheel. That doesn't happen in the companies I've been to. Nobody has that clear message. And that seems to be where a lot of the challenges come from, is there isn't a manager up there that knows exactly what's going on and can break it down for everybody. All right, so we're kind of nearing the end here, close on time. So again, now when we actually talk about how to implement that type of stuff, there's some engagement, and you got to figure out who are the people and what are they, where are they at? Do they have the skill to do the things? Do they have the will to do the things? You may hear a lot of people say, we can't do this because, and those are the external forces. If you can clear those out and you find that you still have somebody with low skill and low will, you're going to have to direct them. If they've got high will and low skill, you can guide them. Or you can kind of coach and delegate. But again, if there are people who don't want to do something, even if they have the skill, that's probably not going to be the area that you're going to get a lot of success from. You got somebody with low skill and high will? Absolutely. We can work with that because they're going to be doing a lot of the work. Otherwise, you might find yourself putting in a lot of effort and getting very little in return. And it's not your fault. So to wrap all that up, where do you see yourself in this diagram here? Are you that leader that's just going forward and doing all the work? Are you one of the followers?
So it's interesting you asked that about that diagram, because I've got my Zoom window actually overlaid over your projection.
Uh-huh.
And what I see is one guy leading with a stick and two guys following behind him. I don't see the top of the sign.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a whole different question to me and how I can see.
You're not seeing the whole picture, Steve.
I know. I need clarity. I need to ask more questions.
Okay, so you're the man with the stick.
I'm observing the guy with the stick and two guys following him, and I want to know where they're going.
They're in a mob.
Okay.
Exactly what you told them to do.
And I'll admit it's a misleading question, because I asked the question with a false dichotomy, you know, trying to make it black and white.
Mhm.
And it's not, I think that you have to be one or the other. I think that people can flow as needed. And usually when I hear that question, like, is it this or that? I start wondering, like, that's a false dichotomy. It doesn't have to be one or the other. There's something else in here. Where's that elusive or?
I would be the one last in line, making sure everyone is, you know, with us.
I like it. I like it. All right. So basically the summary of the talk, you know, it's just some questions, you know, it's like, what are the things that you want? What do other people want? What are some of the real problems, and which ones are we going to work on? And then, you know, what are some of those solutions, and how clear can we make it so we can affect that, you know, positive change? Those are my observations. And those are some of the patterns I've seen. Here are some books that have I found myself thinking about quite often here. Simon Sinek's Start With Why, Find Your Why. Crucial Conversations and Contempt to Curiosity are, I thought, amazing books. And then obviously Secrets of Consulting and Esther Derby's summary of the things that she's learned in her career. All right.
Those are some great books.
And we will have conversations, I think, closing this as well. I didn't get a whole lot of people jumping in, but I believe that we still have time afterwards, right, Steve?
Mhm.
We're at about the halfway
Yeah,
point.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So thank you, Dustin. I would say now sort of ends the official presentation part of the talk cut. It's a wrap. That was awesome. I know that I have thoughts and questions. If you feel comfortable about it, take yourself off mute. Otherwise, what you can do is you can raise your hand and ask questions. You can put them in chat as well too. I have a question that I want to sort of lead this off with, is that you're talking about this, and I've certainly coached in that way and that form, where you're getting to know people. You're parachuted in as a coach, and you're brought in by someone, generally not the team, and they want you to do X, Y, and Z. And the team's like, oh, here's this consultant. We're either going to get fired or downsized, or, you know, they're going to tell us how to work. And going in and asking the questions, getting to know the people, and easing them in, you know, sort of dipping your toe into the hot tub and working in that way. I'm very well familiar with that. That is also what I sort of call the slow drip.
Yeah.
And the slow drip can work sometimes, and sometimes when you're removed from the slow drip, they revert back because of any number of different reasons, or possibly it was something I did wrong and I was coaching too hard. My question is, do you know of a faster way?
How slow is your way? Because my way is being direct and honest. And like, if you come in from a team and being put there by someone else, I've been placed in teams that didn't know I would show up. And then I'm there. And what I'm saying is, like, this happened, I'm here, I enjoy doing my work, and I do this kind of thing. Is this something you want? And I'm completely prepared to just leave and go somewhere else. But if you want me, I'm here. So I take the decision of someone else and make that their decision. And then I can lead from there.
And I think what I'm picking up from Steve is I kind of think of like a personal trainer as an example. You know, my wife could give me a personal trainer membership for Christmas, and I'm probably not going to enjoy that too much. Or I could get my own personal trainer, and yeah, I see what you're doing. I'll do that. I don't really want to give up the chocolate chip cookies part, and you know, squats, I don't like doing them. You know, like where you can kind of pick and choose. And I think a lot of things that I'm talking about is that context. However, I can also join a CrossFit gym where they say, this is what you're doing. You're showing up at 4:30 a.m. and you're doing this thing. Here is your diet. This is the thing that you're doing. And instead of me trying to kind of pick and choose, you just jump in and do this stuff, full immersion, and don't waste the time in arguing and evaluating and asking all the questions. Just do it.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of where you're going at. And that other model, if you have the buy-in from the team to say, we're going to do it, and they have that safety to not be interrupted in their current path, where they're still trying to like hit these deadlines that somebody already established for them, and they're going to revert to the things that they're going to do, but they say you have the chance to do that thing. And I think that's kind of where you're leaning at, and I agree with that. And that's a core assumption that might not be the scenario that this talk is built around.
Sure.
But it is better.
Well, to me, it's about trying to get new behaviors created and people use those new behaviors when I'm gone. And the safety and freedom to do that, and desire to want to do that. And winning hearts and minds takes time. Yeah.
I sort of a kind of mindset. I'm reading Turning the Ship Around. And there's a part in there where I don't remember the quote, but you have two options. You could either change your behavior, which then might lead to changing your thinking, or you can try to change your thinking, which might lead to changing your behavior. And it sounds like full immersion is that you're changing your behavior, and it should lead to changing your thinking. But hey, we know we don't have time. We're gonna start trying some things and expose you to new things. And the slow drip seems more like, hey, have you thought about thinking this way instead? So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. And like I said, for some of the engagements that I've been involved with, the help is being inflicted upon the team, and the team is not giving nobody's holding a big brown umbrella over the team. And it shows.
Yep. Other thoughts, questions?
I was thinking about the full immersion combined with the commitment from the team. Like, you have the full immersion from the team, like they get the option to do the full immersion. It's not put on them. but they
Mhm.
are
Yeah.
choosing to do it with like an open mindset. They might want to evaluate what to take on later on, but for this 2 weeks or whatever, they're gonna just say, yes, sir, we're doing it this way. And then afterwards, think about it. I never done it that way, but I was, when you talked about full immersion and accepting behavior, I thought maybe that would actually be an efficient way to get it, but you need to combine it with the acceptance from the team to do it that way.
Mhm. And absolutely, Patrick, that's one of those things with when you're doing that, one way you can describe it is jumping in the deep end, and you're swimming in the deep end. Now, there are some bad analogies with that. I like to say that this is an all-in experiment. And in order to do this experiment for this type of coaching, one of the things is it has to go on for a bit before we reflect and turn the knobs, because you have to give it a chance. And a lot of times, and experimenting on what that best time length is, but really it feels like it's about 3 months of doing it full immersion and going with it. After that, then let's sit down and talk about it. Then after you've given it a good, honest try and experienced it, now let's play with it. How can we tweak it? Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
It kind of reminds me of, I did see the original Karate Kid again not that long ago, and the whole wax on, wax off, right? Just do the dang thing, kid. I don't want to argue with you. Wax on, paint the fence, and then he's like, this is all stupid. And then he realized what actually he had learned. But we try to think too much. We try to like project out and work through it all. Just do it.
I have that move in my mind as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Great that you said it, Dustin.
yeah. And that sort of makes me fall back on the Ron Jeffries post, "We tried baseball." Because we're smart people, we're developers. We've done a lot of stuff, and we've got, we're trusted with the health and life of the product, the company with its software. So we can make these decisions. We can cut these corners. These things don't make sense altogether. Obviously, Ron Jeffries, "We tried baseball and didn't work," is about Scrum, but I see people doing that with TDD, with mob programming, with CI/CD as well too. So I mean, it's an apt metaphor to me.
Mhm.
An experience I had, I've shared this with people before, but the first time I had Indian food, it was really bad. And I didn't get it. I'm like, how could people eat that crap? It was just so bad. And my friend Gopi invited me over for Diwali, and I love him, and I was really hesitant about it. And while we were walking over to his house, he was telling me about all of the history and all the things that they've done and all the ingredients and why they do things and why, what's good for your digestive health. And I'm like, I don't care. It tastes like crap. And we got there, and oh my Lord, his wife had just an amazing feast for us. And there were some things I didn't like I don't like black licorice. That's just not a thing I like. But the other things were so amazing. And I told Gopi, I go, I got to admit, I didn't want to say it to you, but I thought I hated Indian food. And he goes, why is that? I go, oh, I had it before, and it was just horrible. It's disgusting. He goes, where'd you have it? I said, at the food court at the mall. He's like, you idiot.
Everything's bad at the food court in the mall.
I know. And he's like, you idiot. So I'm looking at my calendar actually in tomorrow. I've got lunch with Gopi again. And I said, you get to pick. So he's going to take me to another good restaurant. But how many people do TDD? And they don't do it with somebody who's actually done it before. And they misinterpret it. So they do things bad. And then they wonder why it sucks.
Or
It's not
pairing
TDD,
with
that's
somebody who's never done pairing before.
Yeah. I don't want to pair with someone
like
sitting
this?
over my shoulder
The
right?
food court mall pairing in TDD. I love it.
That's a blog post right there.
Yeah, yeah. I think for us too, there's that show rather than tell sort of way of influencing too. And I think it kind of is included with this, like with TDD. Like at first glance, TDD sounds crazy, sounds wild. Why would I want to write code that wouldn't compile? But then upon actually doing it, you realize the benefits. And I think when you were saying we were walking with your friend and they were just explaining the food to you and you already had that negative connotation with it. Yeah, I mean, but it's different if you just sit down and just eat the food with them. You know,
Mhm.
hey, it's delicious. Look at it. It's amazing. Just try it.
Right. Don't get hooked on that it's vegetarian or it's spicy or it tastes different. Just try it.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things that I've started to do more with my coaching is talking, you know, as that external contractor that comes in or consultant, is to say, you know, let's just get together and let's refactor some code. Because almost all developers, I haven't been on a project yet that developers said, we don't need to refactor anything. And so get in and just start refactoring for an hour in a structured way, introduce some refactoring techniques, and then, and Cody saw it happen on the team we were with. After about 2 months of doing that, or 6 weeks, they started asking, tell us more about these unit tests. How would you do this differently? So instead of the push model of this is how you will do TDD and you will do TDD, it's a pull model of, hey, what is this stuff? How would you do this?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying with the picture of the magnet. You know, I
Mhm.
think they wanted to know better code design. They were having some issues, so we started there with we're just refactoring some code. But oh, hey, refactoring is easier when you have testing, and then oh wait, what's okay? Tell us about that. And it's just one thing leads to another. But we started where they were at. And I think previous to that, we were trying to push a little bit on testing, and they weren't biting. So it was a good lesson of starting where they're at, and things will go.
Mhm.
By the way, I absolutely love Sherry making all these notes. This is so cool. I've never seen anybody doing this. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sherry.
I was gonna make a comment on that as well too. Sherry, you are awesome. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
Any other questions, or has the popcorn stopped popping?
Or recommendations for me to improve this or change it.
I had a question actually,
Yeah.
or a thought. So sometimes when you go into an engagement, you know, you're being brought in because of something. The client wants to do something, and it could be a leader looking over a team. The team wants something, and then you get there and you were like, wait, I think they actually want this, or I want this selfishly. Like I would like for them to write tests because I think it'll make them better. How do you deal with those conflicting wants? How do people deal with those?
I'll let other people answer first.
I like to ask questions. Sometimes getting folks in a room and saying, here's what management wants, or you know, leadership wants, and why I was brought in. When I talked with everyone here, here are the list of the things that you guys said you think you want, or I don't say think you want, but things that you want from me. And then here's a list of things that I think you guys need. Let's talk about them. let's talk about why we think them and where they might link up. Or is one a root cause and another's a symptom?
I find myself needing to get clarity sometimes. I think that the TDD mindset to me is about being able to state what your context is, identifying the action that's going to take place, and evaluating what you expect the outcome to be. And a lot of people hate TDD because they cannot identify those three things.
Mhm.
And oftentimes it's because if they haven't refactored their code, the context is so incredibly muddled, it's
Mhm.
impossible to articulate. And I also have always in my head that saying, a problem well-defined is a problem half solved. And I try to force myself to be able to articulate the problem, and oftentimes I can't, and I feel stupid because of it. So sometimes I'll try to articulate it and let other people tell me what I'm missing, why I'm stupid, whatever, to call it out, which then to me leads up to what Steve was saying about this is the problem that management sees. This is the problem that the development team sees. This is the problem that I see. Is there a thread through those? Is there something that we can tie them together that brings everybody together? But again, having that clarity on identifying the context, which kind of ties into that whole Cynefin framework, I find is interesting.
And Cynefin framework is a crazy thing, and I'll put it in there for Sherry.
The Cynefin?
Yes,
Cynefin
Cynefin.
framework.
Oh, Sherry already knew it. So yeah,
Boom.
she's a rock star.
I love it.
Yep. And if you haven't watched any of David Snowden's videos on Cynefin, it's well worth a watch. It talks about the systems that we work in, and a lot of it helps for me personally. It brings clarity when I know what type of system I'm working in and what questions I need to be asking. Is it simple? Is it complicated? Is it complex? Is it chaos or complete disorder? It's watching the video will give you an intro into it, but it is a very deep topic too.
I know that's something that I need to learn more about, and I want to.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I've dovetailed that with a guy by the name of Fred George. And he talks about microservices are perfect for chaotic systems. They are if you're in a chaotic system, you can do microservices. If you're in complicated, complex, or even simple, you probably shouldn't be working in a microservice environment. But that's a different axe to grind.
And actually, I'm gonna can I click on this link here? There, I guess not. All right. I'm gonna pull up one other thing here too. This is the website that Skylar Watson and I have built a little while back. I gave a talk on this at the Agile 22 conference, but just since we mentioned the models, I like collecting models. I like learning more about them. So what we've done is, as we've been learning things, we've been putting more of those models out here, along with the references on where to get more information. And as I have time in between clients, actually, that's one of the areas where I want to spend time building these things out more, so I can kind of continue to collect that.
Modelingbetterdecisions.com.
Yeah.
This
And
is awesome.
again, I want more. Like, I want other people to share the things that they've talked about so I can learn and add them to my list, because I find that when I'm reading books, there's usually a model in there which will help me shortcut a decision.
Whoa, Dustin, this is cool.
Thank you.
Well, that just means that I need to send you Ericsson, K. Anders Ericsson, who's Swedish, by the way. K. Anders Ericsson proficiency model, mastery model.
All right. Please do, please do. And I know that the mom mentality people have got a Trello board with a lot of the resources that that they've collected, and that, again, there's some great models in there, so I want to keep leaning on that too. There's a lot of good information out there. I just like I want to kind of keep curating things just for my own use of being able to look at something real quick and go, oh yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
Because I'm
Awesome.
amazing.
All right. Any other questions?
Or recommendations on how to, you know, improve or make things suck a little bit less? Well, you can tweet them at me here if you have ideas. I definitely would like to find ways to make this better. To, again, if there are things in here that other people can use to make their lives a little bit better, not get fired, that would be cool.
Yes. More work, more joy. There we go. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Dustin, thank you very, very much for talking to us. That was awesome. Sherry, thank you for the amazing notes. Those were fantastic as well too. Pretty much ends the meetup for this month. Next month, we have Jacqueline Bilston talking to us about effectively testing data pipelines. Tomorrow, I'll be talking on the IL Twitter space about discovery trees. And yeah, everyone be awesome. Try and find ways to be better and let's get better at our craft.
Thank you very much.